Some of the men who helped build one of the great wonders of the ancient world went into the ground wearing iron. Not armor. Shackles. The world knows these men. 8,000 clay soldiers standing guard for over 2,000 years, each face carved individually, immortalized in every documentary, every textbook, every tourist photograph taken in Xi'an. In March of 1974, a group of farmers near Xi'an were digging a well when their shovels struck something that wasn't rock. It was a face. Within weeks, archaeologists realized the farmers had stumbled onto one of the largest army formations ever buried underground. What almost nobody knows is what was found right beside them decades later. The real army. Not clay, bone. A mass grave packed with actual people who most likely built this place. And for 2,000 years, none of them had a name, a face, or a single line in the history books. So who were they really? Not the legend, the actual men in that grave. Where they came from, how hard they worked, how some of them died, and what modern DNA finally had to say about all of it, whether the empire that buried them wanted anyone to hear it or not. In 246 BCE, a 13-year-old boy became king of the state of Qin. His name was Ying Zheng. Within 25 years, he had conquered every rival kingdom around him and declared himself Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of a newly unified China. He was obsessed with living forever. He sent expeditions across the sea, searching for the elixir of immortality. When that failed, he settled for the next best thing, an empire that would follow him into death, exactly as grand as the one he ruled in life. The mausoleum complex he ordered built was almost unimaginable in scale. An underground city, complete with rivers of liquid mercury standing in for real rivers, a ceiling inlaid to mirror the night sky, and an entire army to guard him, rank after rank, for eternity. That detail about rivers of mercury sounds like myth. But modern soil surveys taken directly above the still unopened tomb mound have found unusually high concentrations of mercury, a strange, real echo of a claim written down 2,000 years ago. And here's the part that surprises people most. That inner tomb has never been opened, not once in over 2,000 years. Between the mercury and the fear of destroying what's inside, nobody has dared. What we do know comes largely from the historian Sima Qian, writing about a century after the fact. He claimed 700,000 conscripted workers built the complex. Modern historians think that exact number is likely inflated, but even a cautious estimate still describes a mobilization on a scale almost nothing else in the ancient world can match. Qin officials were obsessive record keepers. Under Qin law, workshops were held collectively responsible for their output, so many bronze weapons and clay figures were stamped with the names of the supervisors and craftsmen who made them, in case a piece failed inspection. For most of the last 50 years, the popular story about those workers stayed a flattering one. Skilled artisans, proud craftsmen, men honored to spend their lives shaping an eternal guard for a god emperor. And it's easy to see why that story stuck. The craftsmanship is genuinely staggering. No two faces alike. Real bronze swords sharp enough to cut skin 2,000 years later. And originally, every single figure painted in vivid color that crumbles to dust within minutes of hitting open air. But admiration for the art has a way of erasing the question underneath it. For 50 years after the soldiers' discovery, almost nobody asked what happened to the people who actually built them. In 2003, archaeologists opened a burial pit less than a mile from the mausoleum. They weren't expecting clay this time. They found bone. 121 skeletons thrown into the earth with no coffins and no ceremony. No two buried the same way, some stacked, some scattered, several missing limbs entirely. Forensic analysis put most of them between 15 and 40 years old, average height about 170 centimeters, young, working age, exactly who you'd expect on a labor crew, not a battlefield. And their bones told their own story before anyone touched a single strand of DNA. Thickened joints, arthritis in men barely out of their teens, fractures that had healed badly because nobody had time to let them heal properly. Some of them were still wearing iron restraints when they were buried. Not soldiers, not honored craftsmen. Convicts, worked until their bodies gave out. No names, just numbers. That's what 2,000 years of silence looked like, until forensic science finally opened its mouth. Remember that record-keeping from Act 2, the stamps, the accountability, the names on the clay? The Empire tracked every figure down to the workshop that fired it. It didn't bother tracking the men who died making them. And this pit wasn't the only one. Over the decades, archaeologists have found several burial groups scattered around the mausoleum precinct, laborers in one place, and, more disturbingly, women and even palace attendants in others, buried in ways that suggest they didn't choose to be there either. One monument, built to last forever, surrounded, quietly, by the people it used up to get there. The shackles answered one question. They couldn't answer the one underneath it. Where did these people actually come from? A research team extracted mitochondrial DNA from 19 of the skeletons in that grave, genetic material passed down almost unchanged through the maternal line, a kind of biological fingerprint for ancestry that survives even in bone this old. They compared those genetic profiles against more than 2,000 mitochondrial samples from 32 different present-day Chinese population groups spread across the country. It was the closest thing to a genetic map anyone had run on this grave, and the answer wasn't what a local labor crew would look like at all. The genetic ancestry inside that one small pit was remarkably diverse, far more varied than a workforce drawn from one town or even one province, which means these men weren't neighbors, they were strangers to each other, pulled from different corners of a young empire that stretched for thousands of miles, thrown together only in forced labor, and then in death. Somewhere out there, each of them had a hometown, a dialect, possibly a family who never learned what became of them. The bones didn't just confirm that they suffered. The DNA proved how far the empire reached to make them suffer side by side. It doesn't prove Sima Qian's 700,000, but it does something almost as powerful. It turns a chronicler's exaggerated number into something you can actually hold. Real bone, real diversity, real reach. One grave, an empire's reach, written in mitochondria instead of memory. It's a small sample. 19 people can't speak for every worker at the site. But it's the first time anyone has let the workers themselves answer a question the histories never bothered to ask. 2 sites, less than a mile apart. One preserved in exquisite, individual detail for the entire world to admire. The other, unmarked, uncounted, and almost erased, until science went looking. Sima Qian records something even darker about the mausoleum's inner chamber, the part nobody has ever excavated. After the emperor's coffin was sealed inside, he wrote, someone warned that the craftsmen who built the tomb's hidden traps knew exactly where its treasures lay. So, according to that account, once the burial was finished, the inner and outer gates were sealed, with the workers and craftsmen still inside. None of them came out again. It gets one more twist. Archaeologists have found clear burn layers inside the terracotta pits themselves, collapsed roof timbers, ash, weapons stripped from the soldiers' hands. Within just a few years of the emperor's death, someone broke in and set his eternal guard on fire. His eternal army didn't even outlast his own dynasty. Most historians point to the chaos of the Qin collapse, just a few years later, as the culprit. Whatever the emperor sealed inside that mound to protect it forever, the men who built it, the workers who may have died with it, the treasures no living person has seen, it's still down there, waiting, the same way it has for over 2,000 years. Qin Shi Huang wanted to live forever. In a strange, backhanded way, he actually managed it. His face, his ambition, his army, recognized on every continent on Earth. The men who built that immortality for him wanted much smaller things. To finish the work, to go home, to be remembered by someone, even briefly. For 2,000 years, they got none of it. DNA can't give them their names back, but it gave them something the Empire never bothered to. Proof that they existed, where they were dragged from, and what it cost them to build someone else's forever. Every wonder of the ancient world has two builders, the one whose name survives every history book, and the ones whose bones had to wait 2,000 years just to be asked a single question. Who were you? Ancient Evidence Co. digs up the cases where new evidence rewrites what we thought we knew. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one.